Hello, everyone, and welcome to the tavern. Yeah, I'm in a good mood because we had another fun episode of G-Quuuuux, which is not something I ever expected to actually say, and yet here we are. And truth be known, I really needed a good anime in my life, and this one has really given me that nice little boost I've been looking for. In fact, I got so much of a boost from this episode, I actually had to take time to calm down when scoring it in order to not give it a biased score. Because there's things in this episode that just hit my Gundam fan brain a little harder than I expected. So, without further ado, let's break down G-Quuuuux, Episode 2, The White Gundam. Alright, so this is our flashback episode that helps explain why the timeline is different. We open up with a really good recreation of Episode 1 of Mobile Suit Gundam. We see the Zaku's arrive at Side 7, we see them making their way through the hatch and into the actual colony, but this time, instead of Char being behind on the ship for maintenance on his mobile suit, Jean is behind on the ship with maintenance to his mobile suit, meaning Char is part of the initial assault. In the process, Char abandons his Zaku and grabs the Gundam. He ends up picking up its controls fairly quickly, being an established mobile suit pilot, and leads his troops against the White Base. He ends up battling the gun cannon and killing it in a fashion very similar to Amuro finishing off a Zaku with the beam saber cut all the way through the body, and then destroys the bridge of the White Base, killing all the named crew we would have known from the original series. There is no other images of Sayla or Amuro or anything like that, meaning these characters are not part of the flashback and probably will not appear in the series whatsoever, which is kind of a shame because I'd like to see this version of Sayla. Continuing with the story, we then have them leaving Side 7 and towing the White Base along, where they run into the 01 Gundam. Also making this different because in the original timeline, the 01 was on Earth. It is the basis for the ground-type Gundam and the ground-type Jim. It was busy doing its own thing. This time it's in space, and we get a fight between the two of them, and it is very much a recreation of the first Char and Amuro battle, with slightly different results. You also see a beam cannon instead of like the beam rifle, so that might have been one of the weapons that Amuro had to destroy and leave behind in the original story. But man, does that thing deal some damage. After the fight, we kind of do more or less like a fast forward of what occurred in the course of the war. So we get a lot of little information, like Garma retired from the military. He probably married that girl from Earth. Dozle died at the Battle of Solomon. The solar system, or this time called the Solar Ray, was utilized probably at the Battle of Solomon, probably what led to Dozle's death. Because if the Gundam wasn't there, he probably wouldn't have piloted the Big Zam, and instead would have used his custom Zaku, and more than likely got incinerated. Another big section of this episode occurs at the Flanagan Institute, where we see Dr. Flanagan, and we see the meeting of Chila Bull with Char, and how Char wants him to join his side, and not so much be subservient to Cassilia or Giran. We also get a brief moment with Cassilia seeing the two new types in action and being quite impressed with it. Of a note, I do like Cassilia's English voice actress. I'm not sure if it's the gal who voiced her in Origin, but it sounds like it, and it gives her just enough menace. Because she was referenced in Episode 1, I do hope she shows up in more episodes. But that's not really pertinent to the story. We wrap up the story with Char and Chila Bull going after Solomon, because the Federation is going to use Solomon for a meteor drop attack on Granada, which is a city on the moon, which is highly important to the Zeon people. In the battle, Char ends up overusing the power of the Saikamu system that was installed into his Gundam and causes a huge shockwave explosion thing. Kind of like an evil inverse of the Access Shock ability that Amuro uses at the end of Char's counterattack. After that, it is stated by Chila Bull that Char disappeared and the Red Gundam has not been seen. The one thing about this episode is, as much as I enjoyed the recreations, this is a lot of exposition and very little else. This doesn't progress our main story. This doesn't really add much to our characters. It's just kind of, okay, we created an alternate timeline, and here's the big turning point. And then here's how that butterfly affected through everything else. And any of the minor characters we didn't see or didn't get explanation for are probably characters that won't be showing up in the main series. So, truthfully, they're not important. What happened to Amuro? Doesn't matter. What happened to Fraubo, Kai, Sayla? Probably won't matter. Though, again, it would have been nice to see the fate of Sayla, as she is Char's sister, and therefore kind of important. This wasn't a perfect episode, but man, those recreations and the effort put into making this look like the original series in terms of how the Zaku's moved through the colony, how the fights occurred, it just shows the love and attention the series was given, which is so much more than some previous Gundam works that have had very, very lazy work done to them. It's kind of sad when the company that isn't Sunrise does a better job than Sunrise. All right, let's discuss the characters. What few we have this episode. As this was primarily a explanation as to how the timeline changed, we don't get a lot going on with our characters. First off, we have Char Aznable. He's more or less the same. A very deep-thinking person, doesn't initially think he's a new type, but eventually is like, oh yeah, I totally am. He's a really powerful and skilled mobile suit pilot, but we don't really see any of his plot to revenge against the Zombies, so it's curious how that may have played out in the course of the war. We know Cassilia is still alive, and it seems to be implied Garma's still alive. Yeah, interesting to see how that may have played out, or if in this timeline he was fine with the Zombie family. Who knows? We'll find out when he shows up again. But I do like how he was portrayed in this episode, especially as he uses a lot of his iconic lines in a very different context, and his general annoyance at stuff like the Vulcans running out of ammo really quick on the mobile suit, and wondering if the beam saber will really be that effective of a weapon. Then we have Chalia Bull. We get to know him a little bit better in this episode, as he is questioning his abilities, doesn't think he's as good as Char, and isn't sure if he should even be in the Flanagan program. It's cool seeing a little bonding moment with him and Char as Char explains the modifications that were made to the Gundam with the Saikamu unit and the bits, and then also a moment of saying, hey, how about having loyalty to me rather than the Zabi family? So this shows a little more depth into the character, and as he narrates the last section of the war before we cut back into events that are occurring seconds before the start of episode 1, it gives us a little more insight into his character and heavily implies that he was reflecting on his relationship with Char while making his way to Side 6. This is helpful as we do know he's going to be a main character, but again, it's just a little fragment of who this man is. There's a few minor characters I want to bring up. Not that they really did much, just the point of the cameos made me kind of smile. First off, Cassilia Zabi was well done. She feels very Cassilia Zabi, and hopefully she'll be showing up and doing stuff. We also got to spend a little bit of time with Denim and Slender as they teamed up with Char on the assault on Side 7, and basically got to ignore Jean, who was back at the ship. It was cool just seeing them. I appreciate that. And Dr. Flanagan gets quite a bit of screen time in this episode as he explains the new type stuff and discusses kind of the direction the war is going. It's cool seeing Dr. Flanagan do something as he doesn't really show up in much at all. Even in the extended media, he has only occasional appearances. So it is kind of nice to get a little more of that character, though I doubt he'll be coming back either. Overall, the characters are just kind of there to facilitate the story, and we're not getting a lot of depth into them, but this flashback was necessary to explain how things got to where they're at, and to establish that when the Saikamu systems go out of control, they can cause a little psychic shockwave attack thing, which I'm sure will have major payoff later in the show. Where the characters kind of fail us, the aesthetics do not. Once again, this show shines in the aesthetics. The aesthetics are pretty strong. First off, I want to talk about the opening and end themes. Now, I want to point out they do not affect the score of an individual episode. This will be more important when I score the whole series. The opening theme is mid at best, and honestly, I don't like it at all. It is EDM garbage with some auto-tuned voices and some like, oh, here's some like noise. Isn't that great? Not a great theme song. Considering how many bangers we've had in the past, this one is just like, ugh. It reminds me of AI music I've heard online. And I've heard quite a bit of it because there's a bunch of fan songs that have been done in AI music nowadays. And that's what this sounds like to me. It's just like, hey, we just had an AI do theme song to anime EDM. And then this was the result. Then we have the end theme. I love the end theme. I went and re-listened to it on YouTube to jam along with it. It's also EDM, so, you know, but we have a voice of an actual singer. It's wonderful. The tonality of it is smooth and has a nice flow to it, a great rhythm, kind of makes you want to dance around and go, yeah. And the thing is, it kind of reminded me of a theme song from a Persona game. And I mean that in the most positive way possible, as the music in the Persona games is pretty awesome. This has that feel to it, and I'm like, oh man, I like this song. I'm kind of jamming along. Yeah, love the end theme. On the opening theme, wanted to get that out there because I didn't talk about that last episode, because I usually wait to see the sequences themselves before I really add that into the discussion. As for the background music, this episode is awesome. It uses the music from the original. All the sequences have that music from the original. Even the title card thing does the original Gundam title card thing. Hearing that and hearing some of those old sound effects and just everything, it's just, you can tell that the staff really put a lot of effort into recreating that 1979 feeling using modern artwork and just created this wonderful, wonderful audio mix that just, God, it's so nice to have something that has music that both brings back those member berry feelings while also telling me that yes, the staff actually cares and will put effort into this show. We're not using generic placeholder music. Hopefully, as we get into the main series itself, because the main plot still hasn't started, we will hopefully hear more themes for the characters and for the battles that will hopefully keep me in this mindset. I'd hate for this to be the one episode that makes me really psyched about the music, and everything else is just kind of eh. So we'll see as the show progresses. Visually, the show is great. The way that things are recreated in the various fights and the invasion of Side 7 looks really good. The way they show Earth and Luna 2 and Solomon and all that looks really great too, and gives you a sense of scope that shows like Gundam really need. The character designs themselves are all very reminiscent of the original series, so that's always great. I mean, they should be. They're using characters and events from the original series. So it's good to know that they took the efforts to make these characters look like who they're supposed to be, especially since this flashback is very important to the rest of the story, or at least it's important to those of us who want to know why this version of the Universal Century is different. Then we have the battles. We have the initial confrontation between the gun cannon and the Zaku's, where the Zaku pilots realize, oh god, that gun cannon can actually deal some damage. Captain, what do we do? And seeing Char rush in, use the beam saber, and kind of recreate the beam saber takedown from the first episode is excellent. And the references that the other Zaku pilots make to the gear they found that they were destroying, where they said, I thought that red equipment were just spare parts. And the answer is, yes, they were, but the gun cannon was already ready to be deployed. And our second major fight is the 01 Gundam versus the White Gundam, which takes a lot of steps and even some of the lines from the battle between Char and Amuro, recreates them incredibly well, but now we're seeing two Gundams just slam into each other and fight, and it's pretty intense and really cool. And interestingly enough, we don't even get like the perspective of the Gundam pilot, but it works really well. Visually, it's great, it's intense, and it keeps you riveted to the screen. Beyond that, we see a little bit of just, you know, the generic distance space fighting stuff, but still kind of nice as well. And it shows that they put the effort into making the show feel like a proper Gundam series by showing battles both very close up and very far away to truly convey that scope of the 1 year war. So now that we've covered everything, let's wrap this up. This was a really great episode if you're a fan of the original series. I don't know how well this episode would play to anyone who hasn't seen the original Gundam, because the events and the characters won't mean much to you. You're just like, okay, here's this Char guy. He's kind of a badass. Oh, he's friends with Chalia Bull. And then he disappeared. Okay, cool. While if you're a fan, you see the changes that occur in that initial battle. You see the references in the fighting, the references in the music, and the little changes that have occurred, like Garma retiring, Chalia Bull being Char's partner rather than Lala, the second Battle of Solomon occurring 3 years earlier, but still has a giant explosion. Things like that, which really mean a lot to longtime fans, but will have no real meaning to anyone else. It is yet to be seen how much this will affect the main series. Because if this doesn't have a huge impact outside of just explaining the origin of the Red Gundam, then this literally could have just been its own timeline, and we wouldn't have even needed this episode. Just a brief narrator to explain the situation, like they used in Gundam for decades. Until they stopped doing that, which they really need to bring that back. So when I first scored this, I scored it a lot higher because the member berries hit me. The, oh wow, this is how they made the alternate universe, hit me instead of me being more in the mindset of a reviewer. But after I calmed down, I was able to come up with a very clear answer for what this episode's score should be. That's why my final verdict for episode 2 is 4 out of 5. The audio and visuals are amazing. And this is just a generally enjoyable episode as you get some cool little fights and an ending that makes you go, what did happen? In fact, this episode made me want to just follow the Zeon characters, and I'm kind of worried about our main cast, as I don't really care about them too much, because I'm significantly more invested in the Chalia Bull story, which is a flaw for this episode, as we should be focusing on our mains. In addition to that, it is very exposition heavy, and a lot of the names and locations and stuff they're referencing will not mean much to someone who doesn't know the Gundam franchise. Finally, we just don't get much in terms of our characters. We get little snippets here and there, but for the most part, the characters are acting and talking in a way that's to facilitate the story and not so much to expand upon who these characters are, what their motivations are, things like that. That being said, seeing all that stuff, having all those member berries just hit over and over again, and seeing the respect they were paying to the original source material really hit me right in the heart, and I hope the rest of the show can keep that type of respect for the original while also providing us with new and interesting story elements. I obviously liked the episode, but I'm curious about you. Did you like this episode? And if you are new to the Gundam universe, did this episode hit you in a way that made you say, oh wow, that's some cool backstory, can't wait to see where this leads? Or were you like, hey, where's our clan battles and stuff? I thought I was promised clan battles. So let me know in the comments if you are an old school fan, a new school fan, and what you thought of this episode. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Share the video around, because I'm not seeing too many people reviewing the series, and frankly, I think we Gundam fans are getting a good one this time, and it would be nice to celebrate together. Until next time, I'm the Dapper Bard, and I'll see you at the tavern.